Welcome back to This is Gravel here on Gravel Guru, episode 908, number 8 of the season. Neil, how are you doing?
Doing good, Matt. It's good to be back in. As we told folks, we would try to be recording a few more of these, a little bit more frequently, I guess you could say at least, as we are leading up to Unbound, big race here. That's only about, 3 weeks out, I think?
Yeah, only about 3 weeks out. It is May 14th, Tuesday, May 14th, when we're here in the studio. We've had a big weekend coming up. I mean, if you follow us on social media, people know what we're going to talk about on this episode.
I think so.
There's been some big news come out end of last week. On
routes,
Friday.
Yep.
The routes have officially dropped for Unbound Gravel. So that's going to be the meat of this episode. But the week before, what had you been up to?
Well, a week before that, Matt, I did a local race here in Emporia that I hadn't done before called The Grind. It was my first time doing that 100. I felt really good starting the day off. And for those folks that do follow me on social media, they know that I was sick pretty much the week heading into it. I didn't really talk about that because I was just hoping I'd feel better, ignore the problem, and the problem won't be there kind of thing. And so I spent probably...
I typically ignore my problems and hope they go away too.
And so I spent about 24 out of 36 hours Wednesday and into Thursday laying in bed, not consuming fluids, not consuming food or anything. And so within the first 10 miles of the grind, I was toast. I was just gassed because I didn't have anything in my body really to burn up and to use. And I kept going. It was not the day I was hoping for on the bike. Having said that, it also wasn't the worst day on the bike. That the grind 100-mile course, if folks have never come out here and ridden that, I would say is probably one of the more challenging 100-mile routes that leaves out of town here. It is tough. You get out pretty quickly to head towards Towers. Location's pretty iconic for those that have come out here and done any race really in the past. A lot will head out kind of south that direction as you get onto some low maintenance stuff and you get out into the open range. And then we cross Camp Creek and climb there for a while. I think it's about a 5-mile climb almost to the top where the AT&T Tower is at. And boy, it beats you up. It just doesn't stop. You get to Texaco Hill, which again, a lot of people probably know, or at least have heard the name before. And all of that climbing just packed in one after another when you're not feeling the best. Definitely ate me up. I definitely fought some mental demons, I would say, on the bike that day. Really struggled with some of those mental demons. Overcame them, thankfully, and was able to ride into the finish with one of our locals here, Tamir, which was really cool. Get to ride with him for the last handful of miles, get to share that with him. We were both having our own rough days out there, but it was nice to be able to go out and do another 100-miler because I hadn't done a 100-miler actually in 2024. The last one that I did was on December 30th at the end of last year when I rode the 100, then met up with you.
I joined you on that one too.
Yeah, and then we did
for like 10 miles of it.
You got almost 20. I ended up with 120 miles that day, so you were there for a part of it. So
yeah. So overall, rough day, but coming off some sickness.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that even when you're not feeling well, like especially if you have a race coming up, just keep pouring the fluids into you and try to eat. And I did try to eat some. I mean, I ate some crackers and other things, but it was just the body wasn't there. I probably should have, if you're just talking about racing, should have maybe bumped it down to the 50 or maybe even just not taken the line at all that morning. But I'm glad I did. For if anything, just to overcome some of the mental aspects and kind of sharpen that area up a little bit because it's something that I haven't, I guess, done as much work on as I had in the past of just making sure mentally I'm strong as well as physically. Mm-hmm. So,
well, and while you've never done Le Grind before with it, probably not a bad test for you mentally too, just to know that it doesn't matter the race. You've got Coast to Coast as kind of your signature race coming up this year up in Michigan that you're the one that's been on the calendar, you've got it starred, you've been looking forward to for months type deal that, sometimes traveling you get sick.
Yeah, I as I came off the race and I started really thinking about it, the conversation that I was having with some friends and with Brandy, my wife, was, if I can go out there and I can do that 100-miler not feeling well at all, what can I do when I am feeling good? How much better could I do if I was actually feeling good, had a full week, where I was taking care of getting proper nutrition, taking care of my hydration throughout the week. Yeah. And I think I could do a whole lot better. And I mean, when we rode on Saturday, I felt a world better than I did.
You looked like you felt good on Saturday.
I felt great.
Me, on the other hand, at times was a little bit more rough. But with that in mind, being a good friend, I will say, when you came to the finish line, you looked like garbage.
Oh, dude, I felt like garbage. I was awful.
So, anyways, you got it done. What was the total mile count on that?
Right at 100. It was like
Okay.
100.5. I mean, it was a perfect 100, basically. So
So you got it done. What was the kind of week recovering from that, rehydrating into what we did this weekend? What was that like for you?
Well, Saturday and Sunday right afterwards were pretty rough. I was pouring as much Pedialyte. I think I drank probably 2 liters of Pedialyte in that first 48 hours after the grind to really try to get my body back, because my body was pissed at me. I mean, my body was angry that I put it through that, and it did not respond well at all. Like you said, I looked like trash, and I mean, I was bloated. I mean, my stomach was a good 4 or 5 inches out, I would say, further than what it normally, I mean, it was wild. And I just did not feel well. So I started off with Pedialyte. Like I say, I drank a liter of that on Sunday morning and drank another liter of that, I believe, either on Sunday evening or I think maybe it was Monday morning. But got a lot of that in me. And then I just started getting back to eating food like I had been eating normally, and putting good food into my body leading up, because I knew that I wanted to. I invited you on to do the 100 with me. I think probably a couple days into my thought process once I started feeling better.
Yeah, and that's kind of taken us into this weekend's transition here and whatnot. We knew Unbound had put out that it was pretty public knowledge that routes were going to drop at some point this past week.
Some point, yeah.
We didn't know what day. We didn't know when. Actually, when they dropped on Friday, I'd had someone tell me from within that they were going to drop on Monday, so yesterday. So, again, we don't know anything more about when some of this stuff's going public than anybody else. We obviously, from historical routes and stuff, had a pretty good idea what was going to happen.
Yeah. You know, you always kind of know where they're going to go when they head up that direction, because they want to hit certain areas, and certain places are just easy to hit and catch your mileage, and some of the roads are just fun to ride.
There were a few leaks within the week of some routes getting posted briefly and some screenshots we saw. So you started on Wednesday, I think, piecing together, or was that Thursday?
I think it was Wednesday or Thursday. I started kind of piecing together some of the things that I had seen out there, just hoping to make a 100-mile route that was at least somewhat close.
Because we made the decision like Thursday, like, let's go ride the 100 this weekend. You know, we were hoping the official route was going to drop, which it had, but we were going to go out and ride it and preview it. I think before we get too much into the route, Neil, I have one question for you.
Yeah.
What tires were you running?
Matt, I was running for only this.
Okay, let's walk. All seriousness, tires are important. The whole bike is important. Walk me through your bike setup, just so people know, because after this, we're going to put up a link to go and watch our preview video, and then we'll jump back in.
I was riding my Lauf Seigla, and I was riding Specialized Pathfinder Pros 700x47. I put those on not for yesterday, and not for LeGrind. I actually rode it both LeGrind and I rode it, or not yesterday, but this past Saturday. But I put them on there actually for coast to coast, because it's sandy up there, and everybody told me to put something 45 or wider on. I'd had Boken Doublecrosses, which I love. I've been riding those out here throughout all of my XL training last year and afterwards. The last set of them that I had on, I had probably 4,000 miles on them, so they're a great tire out here. But as far as I know, they only come in 42, at least for the Doublecross.
38s too.
38s as well. Yes, I actually have 38s on the single speed. But 42s is the widest they come in, so I was looking for something that was, again, 45 or wider. And so I put the Pathfinder Pros on there, and they were fantastic. Of course, I got my Sodero bags all over the bike, and used some nutrition up front and tools and everything else in the back.
Did your bike have gears that shifted too?
Yeah, I have gears, Matt.
Oh.
Did yours?
No,
yours not have gears?
mine did not have gears on it. I took the single speed out, my 9er RLT Steel. It's the same one I did Mid-South on, and I've been doing most of my riding on. I do have another Steel 9er with gears on it, but
should have brought that.
I 100% rode my single speed because it had the wheel set on it that has my Boken Doublecross 42s. And I know that's the official tire of the event, and I wanted to go ride and see how they handled on it just for this review. I agonized over some of those hills for this podcast.
Proud of you, Matt. Way to go.
So yeah, anyways, Boken Doublecross 42s, I will say mine probably have 2,500 miles on it.
Yeah, no, you've had yours on there I know for a while too. And again, I want to make it clear, like, I love mine. And there is a good chance that when these Pathfinder Pros are wore out, that I put some Bokens back on, because again, I rode those all throughout the XL training. Actually, when you were managing the shop, you got me a pair early on.
Yeah,
I was able to ride those and took
you
them out.
demoed them before we brought them into the store. We wanted to make sure they worked here.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, we put them on, and I went out and rode 100 miles the day after with those, and had absolutely zero problems with them, and had zero problems with them throughout all of the XL training and everything really over the last year, because this pair that had just been taken off was put on right before XL last year. And so I rode them for 12 months, which was probably a little bit too long, as I did start to get a few little small cuts in them. But again, I think they had probably anywhere between 4,000 to 5,000 miles on them, which I can't complain about that for a set of tires.
And for riding in the Flint Hills of Kansas. And both of us running Orange Seal sealant. It's the only sealant either of us have really ever run, I think. So works good. I did top mine off Friday night before, because as you start to get a couple thousand miles in tires, you start doing that close examination before you go on a ride, and the sealant was working. I had a few pinholes and a few spots in mine.
Well, and that's part of the reason why. So I wasn't originally going to replace the tires heading into Le Grind, but as I was cleaning up the bike and I was checking out the bike before Le Grind, I noticed that I had 4 holes in the rear tire. All of them were sealed. All of them were fine. I had probably been riding with at least 2 or 3 of those for a few thousand miles, because I remember when those happened. But as I'm spinning the tire around and wiping it off after cleaning it, I'm like, 1, 2, and I'm just counting them as I'm going along. But like I say, Orange Seal took care of it. Absolutely fantastic. And every single one of them was sealed up great. And for that, I am very thankful.
I've got zero complaints with mine. So now that you know our bikes, you know our setups, we're going to go to a graphic here that's going to have a link to our 100-mile route video. I would recommend pausing this right now. Go watch that 12 minutes. One thing I will say about this 12 minutes is it's essentially a route data dump on video. It's not much of a highlight reel. It is GoPro cell phone footage as it's happening through the day. And you can tell we were really energized in the first 50 miles. And as the day got longer, our clips got shorter and less footage. And so go watch that. There's a link. There's a card here on YouTube to go see it. We'll be right back after this. Okay, Neil. What'd you think of that video?
I feel like I don't remember being as tired as I looked like in that video. Let's put it that way. There are definitely some times, like you say, mid-afternoon, and this is something too with me, just me personally. I always struggle from about mile 60 to 70. It doesn't matter.
No, both of us do.
That is just a dark place on most events. It doesn't matter where, and I can tell looking back at that video when I was in those places.
Yeah.
Exactly. Now, the thing is, I will say, personally, once we started rolling towards Coahulla, about the time we hit road FF before we got to DD and then got up Coahulla, like at that point on, I felt great. Like I felt really, really good. I was enjoying myself, even the climbs. Honestly, when we rolled back into town, and we ended up with 110 miles, the two of us that day out there riding.
Because we rode from our houses, which we both live about 3/4 of a mile from the starting line, and we went with that. So that's why we have a little bit more if you check out our Strava file and stuff like that.
Yeah, so we rode from our houses to downtown, and then back to downtown, and then to the homes. But I felt like I could keep riding that day. That was the nice thing. I really felt like if I had to keep moving was not going to be a problem.
You could probably tell, well, obviously you riding with me all day. There's a couple spots I really hurt. It was not so much the single speed hurt or the dignity that I lost walking a couple hills on it. I think it was 70, 75, somewhere right there, one of those clips we just watched. It's when we crossed back over 177 out there in Chase County.
Yep.
I was pretty toasted there for a little bit.
Well, and right before that, section 2, at least as of Saturday, was a pretty rough, chunky gravel section after we crossed 177. And it was, about 3/4 of a mile in length. And it was just one of those, like, can we just be done with this kind of stuff? Because we know as we get towards Coahulla, things are going to get more and more like Lyon County gravel, and they're going to get a little bit nicer, a little bit smoother. And so we were really hoping to kind of be past that, I think, when we got past 177, then to be greeted with it.
You talk about Lyon County gravel. You can see once we left Americus, there like the clip at mile 96. I refer to Lyon County gravel. Once between Americus and Emporia, it's all the manicured, highly traveled. They could go put new gravel down or grade it between now and the event, and I guarantee 100%. They will grade some of this stuff between now and the event. The thing with me was at mile 56, we came up that little hill outside of Council Grove. Luckily, you turn off halfway up the hill and don't go all the way
But
up.
it still climbs next to it, though, on the
you
gravel.
know, you keep climbing there. The thing with that area is from 56 to I think like 70, mile 70 in there. It's just not very much traveled. There's not much out there. There is cattle out there. There's a few farms, a few construction businesses I remember seeing throughout the day. So what gravel's out there doesn't get beat in. There was no hero gravel, it felt like, for that 15 miles. So it wasn't a hard ride, but it was just a ride you had to pay attention the whole time. You just had to keep, you know.
And we noticed that somebody else, obviously, after the route dropped on Friday, probably was out there riding at least portions of it, if not all of it.
We did see some tracks.
We saw some tracks out of Council Grove, and you could tell that they were as much.
We saw Gravel King tracks.
Yeah,
actually.
and you could tell, watching those Gravel King tracks, that they were struggling just as much as we were with picking a line, because we were just all over, kind of going from spot to spot, and sometimes we're riding almost in the grass, and, you know, just off to the edge a little bit. Sometimes maybe we're hitting a little center tread that's got, you know, grass or something in it, but like I say, it just doesn't get traveled, and because it doesn't get traveled, it doesn't get beat down. And so that section, the fact that it was in our dark spots, or what was traditionally a dark spot for me, from 60 to 70, it just was a little tough. And it's kind of a constant uphill with a little bit of small downhills, but nothing great to really get the speed going, until I felt like we turned south. When we turned south there, then I felt like kind of things started to change a little bit, at least for me.
Yeah. I think it's worth noting one thing when we were talking about the bikes and the breakdown there that I didn't talk about is I've done Gravel Worlds on the single speed. I've done Mid-South on the single speed. I've never done a Century, though, on the single speed on the gearing that I had that day. Okay. This Saturday, I had a 42-18. I know everybody's asking what gear ratio. 42-18. Usually, that's my training gear around here, the one that's on for any of the group rides, jump on the rides, run to Madison with you type deal. Yeah. But typically when I go do a Century, I change up one tooth and I go to 42-19. And I will say, even this weekend, that would have made a world of difference. That one tooth would have been the difference on some of those pitchy tops there between mile 40 and 50. I don't remember exactly the mile marker they were at. Because the thing was I felt like my single speed legs were there all day. Because, and I think I proved that with Highland Hill and Cajola at the end of the day. Like, I made it up at pedaling. Yeah. Now, I wasn't the happiest probably climbing up those. But, man, some of those ones up there in the edge of Wabaunsee County, Morris County, somewhere where the counties come together right up there, it's really odd. All three counties kind of conjoin right there, so you don't really know what county you're in at any given point. But it was just the pitch. I mean, you couldn't stand on the pedals, and when you stood on the pedals, I'd lose traction. You saw me spin a couple times and just fighting that. Yeah, no, those were definitely tough ones. I mean, a lot of them I wasn't quite maybe in granny gear. Maybe some of them I was. I never really looked too close to check. But I heard it. I heard those shifts. Oh, I was shifting. I'm not gonna say that I wasn't. Of course I was shifting. I'm taking advantage of what I have on the bike, which is called gears. And I shifted to get up those hills, and it was all good. I got up there, and I think most of the time I just wait for you to get to the top as well, because the single speed was absolutely rough to get up some of those. It's definitely a hilly section at that point. But I will say, I've had a couple folks ask about the hardest section. And if I just had to break it down to like 4 sections, 25-mile chunks, I would say personally for me, 25 to 50 was probably the hardest section out there. So, know that getting into that checkpoint, we talked a little bit already about the stuff after Council Grove, but getting into that 54-mile checkpoint is really what you want to be able to get to do. Once you get past that, I thought, personally, it eased up. So when we talk about our miles today, understand we are talking about the 100-mile route with those mileages, but there's a caveat here with them. For all of you that are doing the 200 or even the XL, we share a lot of the miles here. I think even probably a lot of them with the 50. I don't know the breakdown on that. No, not so much. No. But on the 200, out of the 108.5 miles of the route we did, what did we figure out? Like 98, 99 of them? Almost 99 of the 108 miles are part of the 200 course. Yeah. So everything is the same leaving Council Grove. Obviously, our mileage is going to be different. But yeah, just keep that in mind as we're talking about the mileage here. The main difference is going to be from what, mile 20? 27 to 36, basically. Are the only sections there that don't. Neil's pretty confident it's very similar riding to what you'd have on Call Reserve. It's similar, yeah. We didn't get Call Reserve. Call Reserve, that's showed where we video there is where we turned for the 100-milers about mile 27, and the folks on the 200 head north on Call Reserve up towards Estridge. I will say that the road that we went on, which is Turkey Road,
That absolutely was plenty of a challenge for anybody that's looking for a challenge of Wabaunsee County, and gives you a good taste.
It's the first place you really get into chunky rock, too. I remember we're climbing it there. That's the road that goes north, right? We did that 1 mile from Caw and then turned north. I remember going, there's going to be a lot of flats here.
Oh, yeah, 100%. No, there's going to be flats there. It is a section that you've got to be wise picking your line. I would say on some of the descents, you really need to keep your eyes open and attentive. I understand that it's early in the race at that point, so people are still going to be grouped up and packed together. Be careful, especially on the descents at that point, because there are areas right now that with all the rain that we have had over the past, I don't know, a couple of weeks or so, there's some areas that are pretty badly washed out on Turkey. And so there was one spot that you and me caught on a descent that, you could see easily fine because we're, riding by ourselves, and we kind of put a gap between ourselves a lot of times when we would hit those descents anyways, because we know that we need to kind of be alert and be aware, but could easily swallow up a bike. I mean, it was just a big old hole on the side of the road. And there was a little bit of a hole, too, that was kind of over in the left track as well. And thankfully, we kind of were on the right one. And I was yelling back a lot to you a lot of times. I don't know how much you could hear, but I was trying to alert you.
And the wind was blowing, and I didn't have a clue what Neil was yelling about. So anyways, he's right, though. Especially Lyon County, we're a lot more flat here, elevation profile-wise. So we have ditches along our roads. So much up there when they get the heavy rains in Morris, Chase counties, they don't really have ditches. Like, the roads are flat to the fence lines. So a lot of the water runs down the road and causes some washouts and some valleys, which, if they've been graded, are fine. But understand there's also, if it looks level, loose stuff in some of those valleys, too, that catches you by surprise.
Yeah, and the thing is, even if it, you say if it's been graded, the reality is most of those roads don't get touched up there. The only ones that do are like
maybe once or twice
the K4, some of the main travel highways of Wabaunsee County. But a lot, Skyline, if you're up there on the 200 course, is going to get touched by a grader. But on the 100-mile course, the Wabaunsee County stuff that you hit is not going to be hit by a grader, except for maybe Chalk Road when you merge onto that. Otherwise, you just don't see a lot of traffic up on those roads, so they don't require a lot of attention from the county to take care of. And so, you get some of those washouts, and there was some fun stuff up there. I mean, you're not going to, in the footage that you saw, if you watch that, you're not going to see a whole lot, I would say, of us riding that section because it was hard to ride, let alone try to ride and film.
It was going to be a white-knuckled, trying to hold a camera, trying to record and stay on a bike.
Yeah, there's some of us I know, like there's a few spots where I think I was at the bottom of a hill or you were at the bottom of a hill catching the other one coming or the other one going up, but otherwise very little in that area.
Yeah, we didn't really stage any shots either of one of us riding ahead, one of us staying back type deal, or re-riding, because we still had to get through 110 miles on the bike that day. We didn't have a crew out there with us.
Even if you look at our profiles on Strava, I mean, there was a pretty good amount of stop time where we had to stop for various reasons. I mean, whether it was refueling once in Council Grove and then once in Americus, we stopped as well. Which
we would not put our feet down as much as we did doing video.
Yeah, but we had to stop. Well, but even then, we had to stop a few times too. We had a big, huge tractor early on go by that took up the entirety of the road and flung
fire trucks
all up on me. Yeah, the fire trucks. I mean, we don't know exactly what was going on, but when we were up there in northern Lyon County, there was probably 4 or 5 fire trucks, ambulances, and cop car all went past us.
And you're going to see that on race day too. Yeah. Accidents happen, and it's one of those things. We could hear it for what felt like 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Hearing the sirens type deal, and like, are they coming our way? Are they coming this way?
Well, and there's a paved road not too far off of where we're at.
So we assume maybe, up on the paved road and that type of thing. But, all you can ask for is, once you see the lights, you hear it get close. We just found a field entrance and pulled over and jumped out of the way because, you never know when it could have to be coming for you type deal. So want to make it happen as quick as you can.
Being courteous, man. I mean, it's a big part for us, I think, riding gravel. I mean, just be courteous.
Well, and in our last episode, one of the questions was, what can we do when we're training out here to lessen the impacts on the locals and that type of thing? We are locals.
Yes.
We are locals here. But, pulling out of the way for the tractor, and literally he got by us for a half mile and pulled into a field and no big deal.
Yeah.
But that maybe took us 20 seconds.
Yeah.
So easy enough there. So we get through this rougher section, mile 36 through 50 in there. A lot of climbs. We had the water crossing, some spots that man, if people got legs, go for it. But I did not have legs on some of those spots.
Man, I had legs, but the gravel let me down.
Yeah,
Oh, so loose.
Where you just lose traction on it,
Yeah.
type deal. And I don't care what tire you've got, you're going to spin out on some of those spots. But anyways, you kind of cross 56 coming back into the river valley, the Neosho River Valley, headed into Council Grove about mile 51, I think. Mm-hmm. Right there, you climb that last big hill. And what I'd recommend for that 3 miles right there is recover on the bike. It's predominantly downhill. You're going to get on the nature trail. Use that 3 miles, that 5-10 minutes. Think about, what do I need at the checkpoint? What do I need? How can I get it quickly? Because the thing is, the more you think about it there on the bike, take a deep breath, calm down with it, the quicker you can get out of that checkpoint.
And one of the things, too, for me that I at least noticed in that section that I did is I kind of caught back up on what I wasn't able to do nutrition-wise when we were riding through some of that hard stuff. And when you're riding through that hard stuff, you're grinding, you're going at it. Your mind is on getting up the hill, getting down the hill, picking the right lines, doing all this other stuff. And I probably consumed over half of a bottle of my 32-ounce bottles in that last 3-mile section after we got past that heading into Council Grove, just to get those fluids back in me. And then same thing with just a little bit of snacking as well. I mean, I did so much of that right then before we got to Council Grove to catch up a little bit.
And I think maybe that's a valuable point. You and I did something very different for hydration throughout the day. Mm-hmm. We both had 2 32-ounce bottles on the bike, but I also was wearing a chase vest.
Yeah.
I will say, just with my handling on the bike, I was very happy in some of those rough spots just to be able to grab the hose and suck on some water there, especially late in the day when it was hot.
It would be beneficial, especially in some of the hard sections. This goes for folks doing the 200, I would say, too, that have that hydration vest. And a lot of folks, I'm assuming, that are doing the 200 will probably opt for a hydration vest, just given that it's 70 miles into Alma and it's another, almost 70, I want to say, into Council Grove. And so having those would be beneficial for them. But like you say, especially through some of that tough stuff, I wasn't able to reach down and grab the bottle on a descent, and you don't really want to do it when you're grinding away up on a climb, but sometimes I did because it's what I had to do. But you can get behind quickly on fluids, and if you get behind quickly on fluids, that can really spell the end to a day or at least start leading to cramps.
Yeah. So made it through the Council Grove checkpoint. What do you want to touch on the 100-mile route before we truly dive into routes?
Just as far as the 100, I think it's a great route. I really do. Like, on paper, I was like, okay, we'll see. And you get those, ride with GPS profiles of how much elevation it is and all these different things. And, me and you both had over 5,000 feet of climbing on our,
I will say,
a Garmin 540.
I will say with Ride with GPS, fantastic tool to use here. But originally when the route came out, it was 3,600 feet on the 100. We're up to 4,266. So I think...
So it's changing or getting updated? Or?
I think maybe once they see some... And I'll email the folks at Ride with GPS this afternoon and ask them. But I think once they're starting to see like some of the profiles of it, this stuff's going to get corrected. It's hard to... We all know that the mapping apps are never right on the elevation.
Correct. No mapping app is right. They all struggle, and they all, I think, kind of feed off of, like you say, data that is out there from rides. And the thing is, too, I would say it's probably a tough thing, especially when we talk about some of these roads. We talked just moments ago. They don't get graded because they don't get driven. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, and just saying how much effort or energy is going to get poured into by a company to say, okay, we're going to make sure we get the elevation profiles of these roads that nobody ever drives or is on correct as well. And so, like you say, I have seen it update. Mm-hmm. But you on a Garmin 540 Solar, me on an 840 Solar, we both ended up within a couple hundred feet of each other, over 5,000 on that route.
Speaking of GPSs and navigation, while we're on this topic, I'm on the 540 Solar, and one thing I noticed, I started with a fully charged device. I turned it on Friday night when I put it on the bike, just to make sure it was fully charged type thing, and 99% or whatever it had on it, make sure my file was there. But I made a point of, I turned it on at like 6:30 Saturday morning before the ride, and then it was about 4:30, I think, when we got home in the afternoon.
Something like that.
One thing I will say about the Solar and the Garmin, it was running full navigation for me. I was getting text alerts on it with a cadence sensor going as well. So those data endpoints, I only used 25% of my battery. So I will speak highly for that. Did you look at how much you had left after yours?
I think I used about 40%.
Okay.
I'm running the power on it as well.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if a couple other things maybe we're adding to draining it. But still, I'm not complaining about, I think 40%. Like I say, I think it was about 40%.
So it's just so nice from the old days of carrying the battery banks, of having to plug GPSs in halfway through and whatnot. So I will speak highly on my 540 solar. It got me through the day, and I got a lot of time left on it.
Yeah, so. No, I love, like I say, I love my 840 solar. It's done me good, and had it for just over a year now, and hoping to get plenty more years ahead out of it. So.
Yeah, and so one thing on the 100-mile route, circling back to that, the newest thing on it was the way we came back into town.
Yes,
it was. It's hard when you see mile 100 pop up on your GPS, and you're tired and you're ready to be home and at the finish line and hanging out with friends and that type of thing. But, anyways, our route's 108.5 miles that we did. The 200-mile route is like 202.
202, yep.
We come in the same from Council Grove. What was your take on the end of it there, Neil?
It's like you say, you see 100 pop up and you're like, I want to be done. But mentally, we both knew ahead of time what it was that we were riding. And
Correct.
so, going in, you got 108.5. Just deal with it. You just kind of have to keep pedaling. Those last miles aren't terrible. 220's got some rolling climbs to it. Once you turn the road M, for the most part, it's downhill. There's one little punchy climb, but that's about it. And then everything rolls over to Highland. You get a little paved mile out of it, too, on Burlingame Road. But it is what it is. For folks that want right at 100, sorry, you're getting bonus miles.
Yeah, and that's the thing with it. I think the biggest thing that just surprised us as locals, and we're grumpy 100 miles into the day talking about it there type deal, is it's just different. It's not the way we're used to coming into town for the finish line.
Yeah.
And I promise you this is the logistics with Lifetime, working with the police department, first responders, trying to figure out the safe way for traffic to get them in town. If you don't know that the road you roll out on, going north, Commercial Street, then up Merchant Street, is a state highway, so I'm sure there's some logistics there of shutting that down all day. It's one thing to shut it off for an hour to get everybody out of town, but it's a difference when that's the main route to get to Alma, to get to Eskridge, to get to Council Grove. It's the main way to get out of town. So,
yeah, to roll traffic in on Burlingame is a little bit less probably to really get in the way. Not as many people will take Burlingame back into Emporia as they take Highway 99, so that probably is part of it too. But also when you look at all the other routes wouldn't hit their number, if you will, if it isn't for coming around that other way. Now, granted, they could have put other miles out there somewhere on the course. Sure, absolutely done that to make it work out. But, like I say, the 200's 202, the 25 and the 50 don't come in much over those numbers. And same with the XL. I think the XL is right at like 351. So that little end part kind of gets you there. And I'll be honest with you, for everybody else at least, those are pretty nice miles to have at the end versus maybe some of the hillier miles that might be out there as you would be further north in your route for the day. So, again, for the other routes, they probably would appreciate that. For folks that are doing the 100, I would say that you're like, why do we have to do 108? Again, you're just getting more bang for your buck than everybody else. You're getting to go out there and roll some extra miles, have some fun. Get to experience a little bit different portion. These are all roads, by the way, except for once you get onto the road that goes right behind campus. Are all roads that have never been on that I know of any Unbound course going all the way back. So, just a different area of the local section to hit.
One major question I have. This is going to be a big one. This is a big one in the Unbound group on Facebook where a lot of our questions come from, and we've been scrolling it quite a bit lately. Saturday, it was bone dry. We were out there. I just pulled up a map here, checking out from the previous week before. It looks like the entire route had seen about 1/10 of an inch of rain at some point in the week prior to us riding this. Like I said, we didn't even see a wet spot other than that one creek crossing that was very low, 2-3 inches of water in it. What would be your mud forecast for the 100-mile route?
If we get rain, you're gonna be on your feet for at least some sections. I mean, we say in the video there's one section that's about 6-7 miles, into it. It's a half mile long. It is an uphill, it is a downhill, and then you turn off that road. You're gonna probably have to walk your bike on that half mile section. It just is very tacky, and the thing is, it's tacky and it's like small, pebbly, rocky, and that is a really bad combination for folks that remember back to 2017. Now, 2017 wasn't the bad mud year; that was 2015. But in 2017. We had a rain that came through at like 3-4 o'clock in the morning. I looked on the radar when it woke me up because I was hearing the thunder and everything, and all of the storm was basically southwest of town and came through this section. And it was a road that was kind of similar. It could be, when it's wet, a little bit tacky, a little bit small rock. And, people were rolling out on the 200. I was one of them. And there was just lines of folks whose races had ended about 6-7 miles in because they tried to pedal through this soft, little bit tacky, little bit small rock kind of section. And it was just destroying their drivetrains left and right. So that's the first section.
Do you remember my reference I told you on the bike? At this point,
sprinkles on a donut. Yep.
Yeah, it's one of those ones where you're going to come uphill and it's going to be a little mud, and then you're going to turn onto nice gravel there, or it's going to turn into some more gravel on top of the hill where there's just less dirt.
Yeah.
Here on the hills, and once you got that sticky kind of frosting, those sprinkles are just going to stick to it, and that's when one jumps in your jockey wheel. And
yeah, I just say be careful, see what folks are doing around you, pay attention.
I will say, from my perspective, I'm a little more optimistic on the mud with it, partly because there's that one road 6 miles in, but there's still rock in this road. I don't remember riding down through there any roads that are truly screaming dirt to me.
So that's the only road, and again, I have been on that one before when it's been wet, and I know that I turn onto it when it's been wet before, and I've made it a couple 100 feet and had to turn around and carry my bike and bounce it on the gravel road and get all the mud off. Now, after that, you can go all the way up into basically Wabaunsee County without a problem. In fact, I would say even on that first road in Wabaunsee County, Turkey Road, is so much chunky rock that you're probably going to avoid anything too wet and sticky.
There's just not a lot of dirt up there.
No.
I mean, that's what it comes down to. There's a lot of loose rock, and that can probably be a little slippery, and, your bike might settle down through it a little bit more. And there's going to be some mud holes at the bottom of the hills.
The only road that hit in my mind, at least as we were riding through there early on, and I've never ridden this one, Moisture, before, been around it, so I don't know for sure, obviously, but would be that Des Moines road that we rode on. It was one that has in the video, there's a grass track kind of in the middle, and then it was the one that we turned off onto where they'd clearly come through and graded it or something at some point recently and kind of had that really loose, sketchy descent. I would assume that if all of that had a good dumping of rain on it, would probably also be a little problematic, but
I do not foresee, and I might have to eat these words later, I do not foresee, like, when you come off the back of D here on a south route where you have a mile or 2 miles of dirt, I don't foresee any sections like that.
I'm not on the 100 for sure.
Except maybe. I could see the section where I walked on the single speed, that 2 or 3 hills. There was more dirt in there, but it's going to take a lot of rain. It's going to take a lot of rain to do anything there, but there's just so much rock in those hills.
There's a lot of rock up there, and I don't even know about some of that stuff. I think maybe down by where the river was at, but even that was a lot of rock. It wasn't, there was a mix of stuff in there.
There's just not as many roads up north, so the roads that are there are treated different.
And the thing is, there are, especially on the 200 course, there's some more dirt roads that are up there. Headwaters is one of them that folks on the 200-mile course will see for sure. There's ones that are definitely there for the folks on the XL that they will see as well. I think Blackhawk and Bobcat would be two that would probably, if it's wet, are going to be pretty muddy and pretty difficult. But on the 100-mile course, I think most of it, if it is wet, most of it will be pretty rideable. I don't foresee really much, again, unless it's just monsoon wet. Bad. Talking inches upon inches of rain
in the couple days before the event.
Yes, correct. I don't see even much really being terribly problematic up there. And then, too, the fact that everything up there is quite exposed for the most part.
It dries quick.
It dries pretty quick.
Yeah. Because I will say, if it is muddy, pack your mud brush because you're not going to find a stick. there are no sticks to be found.
Yeah, we found one tree on the course, and there might be a few more here or there, but they're not going to be where you want them, for sure.
And especially when 2,000 of your friends have been through it, too, looking for that same stick. So make sure you pack a mud brush if it is the case.
If
I think that brings in, just reading that forum, one thing that stands out to me the most is we've rode these roads. We ride them all the time. Maybe not Wabaunsee County, maybe not Morris County, but here in Lyon County and very similar roads, quit psyching yourself out.
Yeah. You know what? I get that, like last year was muddy. I get that there was some mud the year before that too because, some rain popped up. But that also was not the case the year before that in 2021. That wasn't the case in 2019. That It wasn't the case in 2018. It wasn't the case in 2017, except for that little section right outside of town here really early on. Everything else was dry enough to ride. And even that, I rode through. I just pedaled lightly through that section as I saw everybody broken up. It wasn't the case in 2016. Now 2015, whole different story. But just because it happened last year doesn't mean it's going to happen this year. We very well could get hit with one of these days that you don't want, which isn't mud. You don't want to get hit with the heat on one of these days. You don't want one of the days, especially I would say up in Wabunsee County, where it's so exposed with that white rock up there, where it's 90 degrees, 95 degrees. Go back to 2019 and ask folks who rode in 2019 their thoughts on the heat. Not what you want on that northern course.
No, I remember I was helping the Jeep Club with the ham radio stuff that year in Alta Vista under the water tower. It's a very shady park. Just looked like a triage center. Just people laying everywhere, just drinking bottles of water, getting rehydrated. And I know the roads leading into town looked like that too. You don't want the heat up there because finding the one or two trees is going to be what it is. And then a lot of times you stop there and you're not moving on the bike, so you actually get hotter. But, the north route's going to be fun, but quit psyching yourself out over the mud with it. The one thing I would say, make sure you do know how to clean out your cassette and maintain your bike. That's the biggest thing. If you have tools on the bike, do you know how to use them? Maybe we get Isaac on real quick before the race, to go over a few of those things. So if you do get in mud, how do you clean it out? How do you put lube on at the checkpoint? Those type of things, but then forget about it. Make sure you're getting miles in on your bike and training for the event that way versus just stressing over the computer. I've seen a lot of people even posting the photos. We don't post the photos to scare people about this route. This route is 100% gorgeous. It's an experience.
Fantastic.
We are so lucky to get to live here and ride these roads all the time. Don't let it psych yourself out.
That again, the 100-mile route is fantastic. It's an awesome 100-mile route. I absolutely had a blast. And some of the there's very few roads I would say that I had never been on before Saturday. But even getting to ride them, it was just like, man, this is awesome to be able to get to do this. So soak it in and enjoy it. Very few people that are coming for this event are coming to this event to win, to podium. So enjoy your ride. Don't psych yourself out because you can put all this time in worrying and stressing out beforehand, and then none of that stuff happened. And we might have just a beautiful 80-degree day. I don't know. We don't know at this point. So I would say don't worry about what you can't control. Take care of the things you can control, like making sure that your training is proper, making sure that you know how to use your tools, making sure that you do carry all the things on your bike that you do need, making sure that your sealant is topped off, making sure that you can take care of all of these controllable things that are within your power, and don't worry about the stuff that you can't control because you're not going to be able to control what weather's going to be like on race day.
Yeah. I mean, that pretty much sums it up.
Yeah.
Take care of what you can control. Treat your support crew nice. Make sure
100%.
they've got what they have. Don't plan on coming here without support. It's going to be hard. I don't even know how you would do it without being a burden on to others. So make sure whether it's like the hired support for hire or having your own people at the checkpoint. We were able to do it at gas stations this time around because there were not 2,000 or 3,000 other cyclists around us.
And that's the thing too. And I do want to say this because I've put this out there on the forum on Facebook and some other things too. Like you and me rode this, and we rode this self-supported for 110 miles on Saturday. I've ridden a lot of 100-plus mile self-supported routes and done that a bunch. I did that a bunch last year in XL training. That's something I've just gotten accustomed to doing. It's not something that really bothers me. If this is your first century, don't think that I just can show up to Emporia and I'll be fine and I don't need it. It's just, no, bring your support. You need support. It's part of what you actually sign up, officially sign up to do, is to have the support crew with you for the 100, for the 200. I probably think you need them for the 50 or the 25 too, but maybe not. No? Okay. But have that support crew, if anything, just to take the burden off of you when you do stop, because I would say there's a little bit of burden on us when we are self-supported to make sure we don't forget things at the gas station and roll out. And
it's the reason why we had some stop time. That gas station stop was not necessarily quick. But you roll into the gas station, and Council Grove was a hopping place this weekend.
Busy, man.
I mean, there were probably, 10 or 15 Harleys that showed up, people out joyriding on 177. Because as gorgeous as it is on a bike, it's just as gorgeous on a motorcycle going down the highway between Manhattan and
then
Wichita.
You got the lake there as well.
Yeah, you got the two lakes right there in town. So it was a busy place, and you go in, you get some food, you get some bottles of water, you get a piece of pizza, and the pizza was great, by the way.
I know, you liked it.
So, the support crew is important to have, and that would have saved 15 minutes on our day.
Oh, yeah, 100%. You roll up, you get what you need, you get out and go. And so support, is key. Make sure you have your support crews. Make sure you get that figured out before you get down here and you're like, I need somebody, and somebody can't help you.
So I know the bulk of this episode's been about the 100.
Yeah.
99 miles of that overlaps with the 200.
Correct.
Real quick, you might get out and try to do some of the 200 here this week. Yeah. So no promises. I don't want to put Neil into that place of having to get out and do that. He's busy with his life and family and stuff too. It's the last week of the school year here as well. So a lot of things going on. But there is a lot of information out on that from previous years. So do some research, watch some highlights out there on what's going to happen in Wabaunsee County. I think that's the big unknown. But like I said, a lot of those routes have been, or those spots have been ridden.
Yeah, as I look at, just really quick, pulling up the 200 course here on my phone, a lot of this stuff has been on previous routes. After you cross into Wabaunsee County there at mile 27, you get car reserve, and car reserve is going to be your first kind of low maintenance kind of road. There's going to be some chunk. There's going to be some rock. You're going to come off of that onto K4, and it's going to be nice until you hit Headwaters, and Headwaters turns back into really low maintenance. In fact, Headwaters is a road that the sheriffs have told people in the past to not drive their cars down because they've gotten stuck many a time. So it is definitely a true low maintenance. Now, when you get off of that, I think you get onto what is called Allen Road. You go through Eskridge. After Eskridge is Divide, and Divide is pretty bad from everything I've heard. I have not been up there, but everybody I've talked to says that Divide's actually in some of the roughest condition that it's been in a while. And Divide Road's always pretty rough. It has washouts a lot of times. It has got chunky rock, and you take Divide Road for a good long, probably 4 or 5 mile section out of there. As you go through some of the other stuff in Wabaunsee County, one of the other roads that I really want to highlight is Christie Road. Christie Road is probably 1.5 mile chunk.
Okay.
The last time that I rode that 1.5 mile chunk, I was thankfully riding it from the direction that the 200 milers aren't going. Yeah. So I was able to descend it the whole way.
So they're going to be ascending it.
They're going to be ascending. They're going to be climbing it. And from there, you just hit some of the standards before you drop into Alma. You get that nice, big, huge clapboard ravine drop down into Alma, which is wonderful. Take your time. This is just my advice. Take your time in Alma because you do only have the 2 checkpoints to make sure that you take care of everything you need to take care of before you hop back on the bike for that next 70, 75 mile stretch.
And speaking of kind of the water oases out there, I know there's been some negative comments from last year where there's some problems at one of them way out in the middle of the Flint Hills. I would assume this year those problems have been handled. I would expect to not leave a checkpoint without my bottles full because you're going to be in some exposed areas. So I would absolutely be leaving with my bottles full at these checkpoints out there. And I believe where they're all plotted on the map are all on city or rural water where they have an infinite supply of water also.
Yeah, they're a little bit more closer to town. The thing about the one last year that folks need to realize is that it was out there on the top of Texaco Hill, right in that general area. But that's not quick to get to from anywhere. No. It's not a quick drive. It's not a quick trip.
And it all had to be hauled in.
So it was not something that was simple. And so that was a different situation, but they were still trying to provide something for riders. But when you leave Alma, have everything you need to get yourself. I would say, honestly, from Alma to Council Grove. Now, if you get to have that water oasis and you get to stop and you get to refill, fantastic. But don't rely just on that.
Absolutely. Like I said, water shouldn't be an issue, but make sure you leave with it full because if it's a hot day, you're going to want it out there.
Yeah. And again, they're going to have it in Alta Vista. Like I said, it is a town. They're going to have a supply, but it might not be cold. They might not have ice available. Who knows? What else? I mean, but
the year I was there with the ham radio, it was right under the water tower. So I'm assuming they won't run out of water.
Yeah, they'll be fine. But at the same point, don't be stupid and be like, I'm just going to leave with 2 small bottles when you're, a race the midnight, kind of person. I mean, and you're trying to hopefully get in before midnight. Like, take care of yourself, bring what you need. And if you need to stop in Alta Vista to top off, fantastic. It'll be there, but don't rely on it.
Yeah. Take care of yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Neil, I had an absolute blast riding the 100-mile route this past weekend. It might not have always looked like it in some of those video clips, but it was a great time. I survived it on the single speed. I look forward to everybody showing up to town here in just a couple weeks.
Yeah, we can already see that there's, I think, cars starting to head into town, whether it's folks coming and riding in on the weekends.
Or the Sprinter vans are showing up in town.
Or it's the Sprinter vans showing up, correct. Beat me to it. You're seeing more and more bodies coming around. Some of them will pop into town here, and then we'll head down to like Rule of Three, or we'll head out to Locos for a weekend, and then make their way back, kind of as a last little tune-up before Unbound. But the traffic already in town is getting pretty heavy, and it's going to continue really from here all the way on through race day. And I like this time of year because of that.
Absolutely. It just brings a new energy with it. With all this said, this has been a lot of data. There's a lot of data in the route video. Make sure you go watch that route video if you haven't already. The whole reason we went and rode was a video. Well, it was kind of a good excuse to get out and ride.
But it was a good excuse to get out and ride.
But we went and rode that with the emphasis of we want to go get some actual clips and see what it's like. So we're not just up here spewing off a map. We have been out on a lot of these roads. We've rode the entirety of the 100-mile route now.
Well, and one of the things I will say, too, and this is just, as far as why we rode it, too, is to refresh our memories. We don't, and really locally, I would say we don't ride a lot north. Except for when there's a north course, for a lot of reasons, whether it's the fact that it's hard to refuel up that direction, or the fact that there's really only a handful of ways to get around, especially once you get out of Lyon County. I mean, if you do look on a map, you see that there's really only a handful of roads when you start getting north out of Lyon County.
And it is 26 miles to get up there where it starts getting truly, I don't want to use the term fun, but different than what we have right here close by.
Yeah, and so you've got to commit
to a long day up there.
Yeah, it's not something that we go out there and we're like, we're going to ride a quick, 40 miler, 50 miler. Like you can do a 50 miler up around Cahola. Obviously, they have a 50 mile route, and it's a good route that they have this year. It's got a handful of really nice climbs, not just Cahola in it. But outside of Americus, there's nowhere really to stop or to refuel on a 50. Now, to go 60 or 70, then you can maybe get up to Council Grove. To get to Eskridge, you got to commit to an 80 miler. To go all the way to Elma from here, you got to commit to 120 miles, and that's on a straight line almost. I mean, there's really no simple way to do long days. Whereas down here, you can do 100 miler pretty easily, just hitting Madison and maybe Opie.
Okay. With all that said, thanks for following along. We're going to post this in groups. We're going to post it on Facebook. It's going to be on YouTube. Please leave a comment there. Leave a like. Leave a question. Neil and I are going to try to moderate it as much as we can and answer as many questions as we can. With that said, make sure you're searching them out. But don't feel bad about asking a question on the comments there and engage in there, and we will do our best to answer it. So thanks for watching this episode. Watch the other video, and we'll see you on the next episode.